Guys, so warm up. I'm using in Photoshop, I'm using a lighter gray, and that's more how I would be drawing with a pencil. If I was drawing, like if you guys are at home and you're drawing with a pencil, this is about what I would be. This is about the weight. Okay, so page of ellipses as a warm-up to help us get starting with some fluidity, to help us tune in with the feeling of drawing. We're going for the feeling of good drawing, more the feeling of drawing than the look of drawing. Opening and closing the aperture of the ellipse, changing angles, drawing big, medium, and small, practicing design. Okay, and now I'm going to evolve our warm-up into a little bit of a structure section. So in the structure lesson, in the structure column on the Padlet, the first object that's in there is this. So I'm putting in an x-axis, a y-axis, and here's if I coordinate this top shape and I coordinate the bottom shape, symmetrically, and if I look to have them coordinated, here's the x-axis. If I look to coordinate these ellipses across the x and y, I start moving towards accurate structural drawing. But I'm looking to include this in the warm-up because I want for you to be handling this in a way that's like really structural and not so much, that's really gestural and not so much with the worry of structure. So the shape that we're looking at tends to do a little bit more of that. And yes, there is an ellipse that comes this way. It rounds the form in the transverse plane, right? And then below that is another ellipse that sits on the ground. I'm going to draw through the form. This is called drawing through the form. Okay, that gives me my outline there, sitting on the top of the form. And that will coordinate with a cylinder. And actually, in the perspective of the object that we're looking at, what ends up happening is this. And after having laid it in kind of lightly, I'm going to go back with a darker line And one place you can always put a darker line is at the moment of occlusion, right? And another place that's always going to be good, like, so watch what I do here. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make a T into the form there. And that makes it so that the form passes behind. And then I'm going to start to think a little bit about light direction. And this form is a circular form. And so because it's a circular form, what I want to not do is, so the light is coming from the left. Okay, and what I want to avoid is I want to avoid this hard line that states the direction of the light. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is this. Let's say light direction, this starts to become my shadow. My shadow is going to cross this contour in this direction. So here's my shadow. And it's a straight line on a cylinder. The shadows on cylinders will be straight lines like that. And now I'm going to go back and reinforce the shadow. And that was a sort of a tentative acclimating myself to how and where the shadow is going to be. And now at this point, I'm trying to be very consistent with my line lengths. And I'm trying to create a sense of rounding the form. I'm leaving the edge to show a reflected light. Okay. And now if I wanted, this is always a nice move. You can go through and with a slight angle on, with just a slight angle on the shadow, you can go through and add the terminator. Okay, and now let's shade the base. So it looks like the base, it looks like the light ends about here. So I think that it's probably a good idea to at least erase out, just for the sake of cleanliness, and you don't have to go crazy with that. It's fine that you can see the ghost of the work that you did. And so here's a form light, but then as we get to here, things really change. As we get to here on the form drops under. And now this is all in shadow. And notice the perspective that I'm going to put on my cross hatching. Okay, and now I'm going to reinforce that with a cross. And when I say a cross, I'm saying I'm doing the cross hatch, right? I'm crossing the hatching that I put down with a different direction of hatching, and it will densify the weave right? It turns into like, you know how they measure bed sheets and like 400 count cotton? It's the same kind of concept. We're creating a nice dense weave of. And the top is a form shadow. And so I want to deal with a form shadow like this, and I want to be really clean. I'm using a kind of, so I'm stretching my lines to be cross contour lines, and I'm going to leave a section on the edge as my reflected light. And now in order to, I want to have a terminator, so I'm just going to do a crosshatch at the edge. Okay, and now if I felt like it, there's two other moves that I can do to shade this. One of them is I can very gently go through and fill in the shadow area with just the gentlest wash of tone, which still leaves me with a darkness about there, okay? But it sort of unifies, it kind of unifies the shadow mass. And remember, shadow doesn't mean absence of light. What's going on is the main light source is bullying the light. It's pushing, it's taking that, what we're doing is we're saying, here's the light from the main light source, and here's the ambient light from the room. But the main light source is creating our primary sense of form. And going to be really gentle. This is like, you want to work with a nice sharp pencil and very gently do that, okay? And the last thing that you can do if you want to is that you can go here and you can very gently break this edge. You can soften this edge with these really subtle lines crossing over into the halftone, but you have to be extremely careful to leave these lighter than anything that happens in the shadow. And what you're looking to do is you're looking to soften this edge. Really, that's all you're looking to do. In the case of a cylinder especially, you know, the cylinder has a round surface, and so the forms are essentially rounded. And there's one other shape that I wanted to take on in today's structure section. Okay, so that takes us through a full sketch, but I'm gonna go to, I love these. It's the, if you scroll, there's a house shape, two house shapes, and then we have this really fun shape that's, it's kind of, it's the two like upside down kind of, they're like, what do you call it? Like half circle kind of cone like shapes, or they're like this. So one, and then it goes like this, and then the top of it has a cylinder set on it. And there's two of those, but we'll just work with one. Okay, so when you draw something, you see how I've got the invisibles all showing right now? And what you want to focus on in the construction of form is you want to focus on, there's a sagittal line, which goes this way. And we might cut it right there, find it on the back side, and we can bring that up to here and cross over. So that could be our sagittal plane. We're looking for a coronal plane, which in this instance, maybe we'll put right here. And that's a side, a cut along the side. And that might go just the inside of the contour, okay? And then there's And then there's lines that are transverse. And that's the key to thinking through the construction of form. And then it's just getting this tidier, which will then lead to this, okay? And I want to take on one other kind of form. So the house structures that I downloaded, I'm gonna work from the second one. So it's the third picture down, and it's kind of a strange little birdhouse. And that one's, we can start it. Let's start it with an axis, right? And okay, so 1, 2. I want to start out with a box. And that one is on top of a smaller box. And I think that this structure is really fun. It's a kind of a zany, like cartoony house structure. So starting out with 2 cubes, and then you would go through the normal work of establishing perspective on those, and that's to make sure that all the X's, Y's, and Z's line up just nicely. Okay. And here's a little structure that we're starting to puzzle through. To draw a roof on something like this, one of the tools that's really necessary is to find the middle. And finding the middle, technically, this is how you find the middle. Okay. And now here, this line is a Z, and the line on the top of the roof is going to be a Z too. Now here's a line that we haven't been dealing with in terms of perspective, but it has the same properties. So once we've established this line, now we need over here to have a similar, we need this line to be parallel, and actually they'll be heading off to a vanishing point really in that direction. This would be the close edge, this would be the far edge. So this space here ends up needing to be shorter than this space here. That seems easy enough to understand. Okay. All right, and I'm going to leave off some of what might be really, really difficult on this, but, we can still have some fun with it. Here's another line. Now, this is an X line. The line at the top of this little bit of roof is an X line. There's an X line overhanging. I can extrude a box for the window. The window, all of the Y lines, here's a Y line. The window, all the Y lines have to line up with the outside of the building. Here's an X line. The X line has to be in perspective with the lines, the bigger lines of the building. Okay. And here would be a doorway. And if we wanted to do, it seems kind of fun to do this. And in order to get this to come out from the building, this is a Z line on the edge of this building. That's a Z line. If we find the center of this door, here's the center of the door. We go up to the center of the door. So that's a Z line out from the center and over and back. Okay. And then the way to start to construct a staircase is to construct a triangle in perspective. Okay. So for instance, I would drop down to there, take advantage of the Z. There's the Z. Okay. Cut this angle. Here is my X. I go across my X and drop down the Z like so. And in this instance, it is how the actual object that we're working from looks. It kind of looks exactly like this. But you come up, you can go over and go over and come up. I'm having to just sort of clean up some of my errors there. So I want to try to keep everything in perspective. And for now, I'm going to leave that structure like that. I don't want to be overly demanding, but as you when you look at the shading on this object, one thing that might be really fun to practice on this particular object is flat shading. And here there's a little thing that comes out there, and it goes across this way. And if you wanted to, you could fill in this area with black, and you could fill in this area with black, and you could fill in a little bit over on that side with black, and the effect would be strong, right? And this is like just massing in the side planes of the cubes, and I would fill in the entire area that I just X'd out, and that starts to have a really strong graphic shading effect. Like this could go all black, and we could take the all black down to right about there, and then we'd come back in with more of the all black down here. So it looks like I have a little bit of a perspective error there. Okay, but it would be nice to see you take this piece. It starts to work on, it starts to give us the graphic impact of, shading. Okay, so we're moving our own little structural drawings over to, and I would try to just go really, really, really clean. And sometimes it takes like a bunch of layers before it starts to look good. You know, you can work with a softer pencil, like if you have a 4B pencil or at least a 2B pencil, and you try to keep it nice and sharp, and then you do careful hatching and cross it and cross it and cross it, and do like little waves of shading, and it turns out being a beautiful mass of black. Turns out I'm going to do this one. And that opens us up to be like, okay, this side of this thing will be a flat black, and this side of that thing will be a flat black, and this side of that will be a flat black, and this side of that will be a flat black. And obviously I haven't detailed out the structure yet, and I would detail out the structure before starting to fill in. But what I really wanted to show you an example of was, I just wanted you to see, I want you guys to start working with structure and shading in a way that's like kind of clean and developed, and so I thought this was a nice little transition. this is going to end up being particularly nice, like if you're working in pen and ink but, okay. So I'm going to take away some of my structure lines. And we have, just a cute little sketch, a cute little structural sketch. And the stairs inside of there would cross from, all of them would have to line up on the x-axis with perspective, okay? They'll have to converge in the x direction. Okay,